focus is in honor of Black History Month and specifically Black artists. We're going to change it up a little bit. Susanne asked me to do the meditation first, and then I will turn it over to Susanne for our magical tour. So, my friends, you've been here with me before, and you know it all starts with the breath. So if you'll breathe in deeply and relax, release all those tensions of the day. Taking an inhale breath to the count of 5, slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then exhale. And the trick here is to exhale for longer than you inhale. Some call it a 2-1 breath. So you exhale for twice as long as you inhale. So if 5 was too long, the next breath, go ahead and inhale to 3 or to 4. And then exhale. And as you do, just let your body melt. Settling into your chair. Breathing. Some people like to close their eyes to block any visual distractions. Or maybe you just like to focus on the painting that's before us. Inhaling and exhaling. And now, my friend, I invite you to journey with me. And I invite you to walk along this path. Let's seek love and spread joy. And as we meander, let's remember. Remember the truth of your being. Remember. Remember what was whispered to you as you began this soul's journey. Remember? Remember the love that you experienced and the love that you gave. Move yourself back on the continuum of time and remember. Remember? Let your mind rest on someone you love. Someone that you love without measure. Someone you have loved with all your heart. Remember? Remember. And in the words of Lao Tzu, empty your mind of all thoughts. Let your heart be at peace. Watch the turmoil of beings, but contemplate their return. Each separate being in the universe returns to the common source. Returning to the source is serenity. If you don't realize the source, you stumble in confusion and sorrow. When you realize where you've come from, you naturally become tolerant, disinterested, amused, kind-hearted as a grandmother, dignified as a king, immersed in the wonder of the divine, You can deal with whatever life brings you. And when death comes, you are ready. Remember. So now, my friends, I invite you to come back from wherever you journey to, back into the present, open to this amazing shared experience. So Susanne, the platform is all yours. I'll control the mouse.
Thanks, Claudia. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. That was lovely. That put us in the mood. And let's go ahead and journey forward. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Maya Angelou said that, and I'm sure this sentiment is true for all artists, and no matter the medium, it's our stories that connect us. And so as Black History Month comes to a close, let's take a look at only a few out of dozens of the African American artists of the Crocker Collection. And it allows us to see their stories, their history. They channel their familial backgrounds and personal experiences into their work. And more interesting, their stories are so interesting. Art gives voice to personal stories. Art equalizes the viewer and the artist. Art provides an avenue for passions and celebrates the story. So let me start with the pieces that we have are not in any particular order, but I'd actually like to start with one of the oldest pieces in the Crocker that is painted by an African-American artist. And this lovely piece was painted by Grafton Tyler Brown in 1891. Now, Tyler Brown was a topographic painter. He was a cartographer, and he was born in Pennsylvania in 1841 and came to California when he was 14. He came to San Francisco and as an apprentice for a lithographer. So he became California's the first African-American artist. He worked as a lithographer in San Francisco for 11 years, and then he moved to Canada in the early 1870s to be part of a land survey party and then document the area, and it included the Cascade Mountain region in the Pacific Northwest. He became enamored with landscape painting, and he frequently painted Yellowstone and Yosemite, actually the two first national parks, as his natural subjects. He loved it. And what is so wonderful about this particular painting that I find, and they were different than many of the paintings of the time, is that this painting is rendered true. The landscape artists of the late 1800s were kind of romantic. So they made the landscapes appear more dreamlike and perfect. And what Grafton Brown did was, this was true. It could be almost a photograph. And he did not embellish, he just painted what he saw. So to me, his painting, his passion was the land in all its forms. And his story was pure nature. So let's go ahead, and please, this is very casual. You have a question, you have a comment, please jump right in. All right. Claudia, let's move to our next one. I'm going to talk a little about the artist before we look at this particular piece. The artist is Kehinde Wiley. He was born in Los Angeles, and he and his twin brother began studying art at his mother's urging, who was hoping to keep them away from danger. He enrolled them in weekend art classes. And so during that time, Wiley visited some of California's largest museums, including the Huntington, where he became enamored with the old masters of he found their aristocratic power that was astonishing, and it remained with him and influenced how he would eventually portray his subjects.
back then, but it was still very funny.
Well, I played against your mom. She was tough. Is she a tough mom?
I'm sorry, is somebody saying something I can't understand?
Cool, cool.
Background noise.
Oh, background noise? Oh, okay. He, he references these paintings of royalty or wealthy people, those with power and privilege, and he replaced those figures of the past with the people of color in contemporary clothing. And he adorned his paintings, much like the masters, with very ornate gold frames. So all of his are sitting in gold frames. What's to me so wonderful about Wiley's models is that they are cast directly from the street. He goes out, he shows out into the street, he shows potential models, specifically young African American men, images of the old master paintings of the aristocrats, and he asks them to select a pose. And then he paints the people, the everyday people who have traditionally been marginalized, with a lot of honor and symbols that were usually reserved for the upper class. So let's take a look at these two paintings. And anybody want to just jump in? What do you notice first? Anyone?
Same pose.
The same pose. Thanks, Lil. Anything else?
The flower.
The flower. They're both holding a flower. Absolutely. So we have the same pose and they're holding a flower. And Wiley kind of matched the pose of the sitter in Rembrandt. This is a Rembrandt painting called Woman with a Pink. And he tends to challenge the femininity, the masculinity and feminine beauty. So where you would think of women holding a flower, he actually has the men hold that too, because it's very symbolic. And Wiley exchanged the pink carnation, which is a symbol of love and marriage, for a tulip, which is a symbol of luxury and wealth. And it's also kind of a nod to the Dutch Golden Age, which Rembrandt painted in. And it also symbolized a lot of wealthy patrons. So also, instead of looking down like the woman with pink, she's looking kind of sideways down. Simon George is looking directly out at the canvas. He's basically inviting the viewer to say, hey, look at me. I'm somebody, I am not invisible. So let's take a little look about his jersey, the jersey and his jacket, the writing on there. Anybody want to kind of take a look and tell me what you see, or tell us what you think you see?
Well, it's the N word I think he's trying to spell out.
Okay, so you see an N, you see an N. What else? Anybody see anything else?
G-E-R.
G-E-R, right, okay.
L-A.
L-A, all right. So Wiley has said that so much of what he does is a type of self-portraiture. And so people have speculated about the words, that they are partially obscured, but one combines with the LA lettering, the LA on the sleeve, they seem to loosely spell out Nigeria. And so you can kind of see the N-I-G-E-R, the L almost becomes an I with the A. And that's perhaps a reference to Wiley's absentee Nigerian father. So he was raised by a single mother, he and his twin brother, and his father was Nigerian. So there's speculation. I have never heard, and I've read a lot about him, but I have never heard him say specifically what that was, but I think that speculation is as good as any. Now I know
I love the eyes, Susanne. I mean, the eyes are so amazing in each of them, like her being demure and taking her role in society, and him taking his role in society. Like you said, look at me, but it's like, don't F with me. Don't mess around with me.
yeah,
I just love that.
Exactly, Claudia, and I'm confident. I'm holding a flower here and I'm really confident. but it's that symbolism. And it would be interesting to talk with this young man to find out why he actually chose that particular pose. And, you know, I think we talked briefly that Wiley is incredibly technically skilled. The skin is luminous. The hands are luminous. And what Wiley is known for is those jewel-like tones. And when you see this particular piece in the gallery, it is magnificent. It's bright, it's bold, it glows. It is a beautiful piece, and it's quite large. It's a little over 4 feet by 5 feet. So it's a good sized piece. So I know that some of you are probably trying to figure out where you've heard Kehinde Wiley's name. Claudia?
President Obama.
You're right. He painted, there's the man himself, and he did paint Barack Obama's formal presidential portrait. And
see that, Suzanne. Is it my machine or?
Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah? I don't know, Catherine. I don't know what.
I'll fix it.
Okay. It is, to me, it's really informal dignity. I think Wiley in this painting stripped away the trappings of the office. You know, Obama is leaning forward. He's projecting a level of openness, a quiet dignity. Again, the eyes looking forward, inviting you into the picture. He looks directly out at us. I think what he has said is that he wanted the viewer to see that the notion of democracy works from the bottom up instead of the top down. And that's what Obama is projecting. Does anyone want to guess at why the lush background, what the symbolism of the lush background is? Okay. Well, remember, Wiley likes to do the personal stories with any of the people that he's painting, and Obama's personal stories is woven into that background. The jasmine represents his birthplace, which is Hawaii. The African blue lilies are his father's Kenyan heritage, and the mum, or chrysanthemum, is the official flower of Chicago, which is where his new chapter started with Michelle Obama, and his children were born, and he became a senator. So it's kind of the story of quiet dignity. It's a magnificent piece, and it's a large piece. It's very, very large, but very much different than any of the other presidential portraits. So let me ask you, what do you think Kehinte's passion and his story is? Anybody want to take this? I mean, it's an open-ended question. There's no right or wrong. It's just a question. Anybody want to take a guess, an idea, thought?
Suzanne, I think that to me, he's really portraying strong, confident people in so many different environments and poses, but they're all very powerful, but gentle. You know, there is not any rage, but anyway, I love his work. So
it is beautiful, and I think you're all right. I think that it's the everyman is important and visible story, and his passion is the portrait. It's people. He loves people, and he renders the people gently and tenderly, but with a lot of dignity and confidence. And his work is just stunning. Okay, Claudia, let's go to anybody.
He certainly conveyed in this portrait the essence of the man, the thoughtfulness, the caring in his eyes, the power, but not brute power, but the power of somebody who knows who he is. I love this piece.
Yeah. All his pieces are all, and I hope. Gail, did you have a comment? I see.
I just wanted to say one thing about the eyes.
on all three, the two that he did and the one that was posed from. All of those eyes to me say it's complicated.
Oh,
Isn't it always? There's always
Yeah.
a story behind the story, isn't there?
They all three look like, wow, there's something in there.
Exactly. I agree, Gail. And it's like you think you know me, but you really
Yeah.
don't. You really don't. You know you know some of me, but you
Mhm.
don't know who I am. And I think that's the wonderfulness about artists is that you who they portray or what they paint, you never know the exact story behind it, so it opens it up to a lot of different thoughts, and I think that's the dynamic part of an artist.
this could be a photograph, though. He is so accurate in his depiction. It's amazing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's beautiful.
Is there anything significant about the chair he's using?
I don't know, Lillian. I have researched it and I don't know specifically. I think it was a chair from it was in the White House, or a historic chair. And maybe that's the melding of the historic part of the presidential, that more formal part with the informal posture that he has. I mean, I'm only guessing here, but I haven't found anything specific about that particular chair.
He has such a calm but commanding presence.
Yeah, exactly. It's wonderful to feast your eyes on. Anyway, I know we could spend all the time talking about Kehinde Wiley, because if you get a chance, go Google, look at a lot of his work. It's stunning. He's done
I think the fact that his wedding ring is prominent is important.
Oh,
You
good
know,
observation.
he didn't cross his hands the other way.
No,
You
he
know,
didn't.
I mean, just my thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a lefty though, isn't he? I think he's a lefty. All right. Let's go to an artist that I know some of you are familiar with. I spoke about one of his pieces in one of our earlier talks, and that's Lawrence Jacobs. And last year, the Crocker was honored to host a special exhibition called Windows into the African American Experience with the Prince of Jacob Lawrence. And so here's one of them. Now, I have to say this is not owned by the Crocker, but it was in the show. And it's one of these stunning pieces that you could spend, again, a lot of time pulling and teasing apart and talking about. But first, let's just talk about what strikes you with this print. And you want to just...
Primary colors, mostly.
I'm sorry, what, Lil?
Primary colors, solid colors,
Yes.
simple colors.
Very simple, straight colors, yes.
It almost looks like a woodcut.
Almost like a woodcut. Okay. Anything else?
They look like they might be going to church. They're all dressed up.
You're all dressed up. Exactly. Well, this Jacob Lawrence was strongly influenced by the vibrant city life he observed during growing up in Harlem, and he was part of the Harlem Renaissance. And he had his first show at 21 years of age at the Harlem YMCA of all places, and he was at 24. He was the first African-American artist to be represented by a major New York gallery. These particular series that he did was honoring the family and labor and the history of the African-American person. And what he did, and Catherine, you were close to it. It's not a wood block, but it's a silk screen. And those of you know that silk screening is every color is a separate screen. Right. And to have these register so perfectly with so few colors and provide the emotions, if you look in the faces of the people with using so few colors, is astonishing. And this particular one is named The Builders. And it looks like, if you look at it, it looks like there's more than one story going on, and there's probably a double meaning to it. Builders as in family, builders as in they're building a
Yeah.
construction, they're constructing something. So it's simple, but it has a lot of, I think, deep and hidden meanings. Lawrence referred to his style as dynamic cubism, but, and that's probably very right, but I think of him as a visual novelist because he had his vivid observation of this dynamic city life in Harlem but he did it very cleanly and very simply. And every piece that he did was a portrayal of either social gatherings or interior spaces or street scenes. And they always seem to evoke a sense of family and kinship and community. And this certainly does it. As I think Catherine said, they might be going to church. They look like they're dressed up in their Sunday best. They just look at their emotions on their face. I mean, they're proud, they're stepping out here, and they are too building a family. So I love Jacob Lawrence, and his prints are they're so deceptively simple. And this is one of those series that he did. He did a number of different series, and they're just absolutely striking. And they're striking here, and when you see them in person, they're striking. They're also striking. Anybody have any questions or comments about this particular piece? Okay, let's go on to our next one, Claudia. All right. Now, this are two prints from a family of artists, the Saar family, S-A-A-R. And right now they have a show at the Crocker called Legends from LA. The mom is Betty Saar, and her daughters Leslie and Allison. And all three use different mediums. All three engage with themes of race and gender and spirituality and identity, and all have different narratives, and they have unique voices. But right now, I want to focus on Allison with these two pieces. And these are relatively new. 2018, Allison produced what she called the copacetic portfolio. And it's a suite of 8 multi-block lino cuts or linoleum cuts, very similar. You know, Catherine, you said wood blocks. They're very similar, the same concept that you would be using. These 8 multi-block lino cuts, they reference the imagined and probably the vibrant scenes of, again, the Harlem Renaissance. And they include these two, which is Shabbat, which is on the right, and the torch song. That's pretty, I mean, it's a wonderful play on words on the left. And let's talk about the torch song a little bit. Most of you probably know a torch song is understood to be a sentimental song of lost or unrequited love. The torch songs generally follows a melodic structure of the blues. And the blues were created by African Americans in the South after the Civil War. And what is so unique about this particular piece is that she did it underscoring the title as a link to Hollywood and racism, because the torch song is a movie from 1953. It featured Joan Crawford, and it's a love story of Broadway musical singer Crawford and her blind rehearsal pianist. And the film features a musical number called Two-Faced Woman, and Crawford lip syncs it in blackface. So Allison did this particular piece not only to honor the torch singers of the Renaissance Harlem, but also as a kind of kickback to that to that movie. And again, the one on the shabab is a saxophone player. A lot of music was going on in the arts during the Harlem Renaissance, and it was a quite lively place all around. And one thing you might notice about both of these is that the blue is predominant in both of these pieces. And does anybody have maybe an idea of why that she would be using blue so predominantly?
The blues.
The blues, that is absolutely a good thought too, blues. And it's also that many culture, the blue is used to ward off evil spirits.
Mm.
And so you see it in jewelry, beads, stones, clothing. And in the West African tradition, the South African American porches, ceilings, doors, or window trim are painted with a blue to keep
I forgot.
the
about
hates, the evil spirits from entering the house.
Bad juju.
Bad juju, absolutely. And again, I just want to mention about the lino cuts. I don't know if you ever went to camp as a kid and they gave you a piece of linoleum and these little sharp tools and said, you know, cut out an image, and where you cut away you can't see, and what's left is what you ink up and then you press down. Well, it takes a really skilled person to be able to do this with these very, very delicate cuts where it's shading in the arm, or the jacket that has these little wrinkles or images in it. Those are what's left after you cut away everything else.
Hmm.
So, and then each of these are a separate linoleum cut that's inked separately, and then printed on top of the same piece. So it's a very tedious, you have to be very skillful to do this.
Well, and it
So
almost looks like a elongated plantillism, right?
Elongated what?
Plantillism.
Oh yeah, in a way. Pointillism.
Yeah, it does. That's interesting, Melissa, you'd say that. Yeah, it does. It has very similar feel sometimes to a wood block, and which obviously takes tremendous skill to do also. Anyway, these are just lovely, brilliant pieces, and when you see them at the Crocker, and I'm sure that the Crocker will be open there through August, so you can come and see them. They are these little, they're not little, they're nice size. They're probably 10 by 12, but jewels, they just sparkle, and they're just wonderful and vibrant. Okay.
Susanne, did you mention the bodies in the saxophone, coming out of the saxophone?
Oh no, we were talking about that earlier, weren't we, Claudia? If you look at the blue coming out of the saxophone, you can make out some bodies. Now I don't know if these are evil spirits being blown away, or
that picture on the sides in the way, the pictures of us in the way of them.
What is in the way?
what's in?
No, the pictures of us that are.
Oh, you can move it. Just move it.
Just move you, Connie. You control how you see yourself.
At the top and move it away. Move it over.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Something new, huh?
Yeah. All right. Let's move along to our next guest artist, and we're going to spend some time on this next one. Okay. I confess the Crocker does not own a Van Gogh. All right. It does not own a Van Gogh. And as you probably all are very familiar and know, this is one of the Van Gogh's sunflower pieces. But what's important about this is the connection to our next artist, Faith Ringgold, who is best known for her story quilts. And we're going to see on our next picture why these are important. Claudia, there we go. while you feast your eyes on this beautiful story quilt, let me tell you a little about quilts in general. And Catherine is our resident quilt expert. She does quilts all the time. She's masterful and skillful in it. So Catherine, if I'm missing something, please jump in about the history of quilts, and I'll do this. I'm just going to give you a little tidbit of it, that what I've read, that the African American women are credited with the beginnings of quilt making in America as part of their duties as enslaved people. They made them for the plantation owners, and they were utilitarian, but they were also somewhat subversive. The quilts were an acceptable art form that the enslaved women used to keep themselves warm and their families warm, and of course the plantation owners warm, but they were also the canvas to import their art, because they couldn't bring their African art forms with them. They were forbidden to speak their language. They were forbidden to practice their religious or spiritual beliefs. And so this way they were able to bring a little bit of their home with them. And the quilting bee was born as a gathering of these women to create the squares to form the quilt and to complete it more quickly. So the more hands, the quicker the quilt was done. And it eventually became obviously a social gathering to exchange the news of the day and exchange fabric pieces. So Catherine, did I hit that kind of okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
I love it. You've got the black women with Van Gogh there.
Yeah, there we go. Well, we're going to talk about that a little bit. So I want you to kind of continue to explore the quilt as I tell you a little more about the artist, Faith Ringgold. She was born in 1930 in New York.
Hello.
And grew up in the Harlem Renaissance, surrounded by future legends such as Duke Ellington and the poet Langston Hughes, who actually lived around the corner from her family. So she said that there was so much excitement and festiveness in the air that people would gather on the rooftop, on the stoops, in the park, and tell stories. And so she said it was no surprise that she became a storyteller with her art. And she had chronic asthma and spent a lot of her time indoors and with her mom, and who helped cultivate her creativity by supplying her crayons and paints and sewing, teaching her to sew. And she had a lot of leftover fabric, so she started fashioning different forms with it. In the 1950s, Ringgold completed her Bachelor of Fine Arts at New York City College, and she said she received a fabulous education in art. She said she had wonderful teachers who taught me everything except anything about African art or African American art. So she took that into her own hands and started exploring it on herself. By the 60s, Ringgold was somewhat of a known artist, and she began showing in galleries. And as she was showing one of her work to a particular gallerist, of her still lifes and landscape, the gallerist said, "You can't do this. You can't do that." And Ringgold was taken aback. And she said, "What do you mean I can't do this?" And the gallerist said, "You can't do that." And then Ringgold realized that what she was saying was, hey, it's the 1960s, all hell is breaking loose all over, and you're painting flowers and leaves. You can't do that. Your job is to tell your story. So tell it she did. And she changed her focus and style intent, and she began with a whole series of iconic paintings called The American People, and they were pretty much in your face. They explored race relationships in the US. And she said her ideas were coming from her reflecting on her life and the lives of the people that she had known and had been in some way inspired by. So she's doing these series of very social commentary and activist paintings and other types of artwork. And then all of a sudden she starts doing quilts. So why quilts? I'm glad you asked that. Thanks for asking.
Suzanne,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was on Zoom on my phone,
Uh-huh.
and somehow it decided I needed to be in safe driving mode, and it won't, I can't see the picture. So I'm
Oh,
trying to get in on my computer, and
Okay.
it says the host will let me in soon. Could someone
oh,
let me in,
okay.
please?
Oh,
That
Thank
would
you.
be Claudia.
hang on.
Sorry.
No
Thanks.
worries.
There's nothing, that's the downside, Gail, for this. Sometimes it never comes up and says, hey, there's somebody in the waiting room.
Yeah.
I can't.
There's Gail. There's Gail.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I can't when I'm sharing it. It won't.
Okay. Let's see, where were we?
Hang on,
Okay,
hang on. She
I
can't-
am.
She can't share and let somebody in at the same time.
Yeah, can you see now?
Yes, I can see.
Yeah, Gail's in.
Oh,
Okay, is everybody, can you see the quilt?
no.
No, not yet.
No.
Okay. Well, operator error.
That's okay. Hey, I get what I pay for.
What? I'm getting paid?
No, that's why I'm getting what I'm paying for.
I know. All right, let's see. Back here. Where can
Okay.
I share? Share screen.
Okay.
There we are.
All
And
righty.
need to go to this one and there. Yay.
Yay, good job. Okay. So, because remember, she was very asthmatic, and the dust from the wood and clay and some of the other items she was working with was exacerbating her asthma. She turned to making soft forms with fabrics. She said the quilts grew out of her need to tell stories, and not with pictures or symbols alone, but also with words. So the other thing which I thought was most interesting and why she turned to quilt making, quilt stories, was because she said she didn't want to rely on her husband to help her carry her work to a gallery. She said even the largest pieces she could roll up and take it wherever she needed it. So a very independent woman. Whoop, Claudia, I think it
Am I
went back.
gone?
Beg your pardon?
All right, let me see what I can do here.
I can still,
So the writing around the edges, is that a story that's being told?
It is a story, and I have to tell you, I have not been able to find anything that talks about what the what it says. And even when I saw this quilt in person during a show that the Crocker had several years ago, I could not figure out what the writing said. So anyway, Claudia, there we go. Good job.
Sorry.
Okay. So
Is this a quilt or a painting?
it's a quilt, and it's painted fabric and quilted. And she has done dozens and dozens of these in different series, and they are fabric quilt stories. And as we've been looking at it, so we've all kind of, you could probably tell me who these women are. That shows 8 distinguished African-American women at a quilting bee. And maybe you're not able to see as clearly, but so I'll go through these very quickly, starting from the left is Madam C.J. Walker, Sojourner Truth, I.B. Wells, Fannie Hamner, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Ella Baker. And all of these women were either civil rights activists, entrepreneurs, abolitionists, women's activists, right activists. One was a founder of the NAACP. They were all women that Faith Ringgold was inspired by.
they're outstanding in their field.
And they're all, and okay, so here we go. They're all around the quilt of sunflowers. They're all looking forward, and they're all celebrating the female solidarity. They're pursuing what is a historically feminine tradition of quilting in a male-dominated painting world, who's represented by our buddy, as you can see, to the right of them, well, actually to the left of them, my right, who is Vincent, and he's holding up a vase of his sunflowers. Now, and what's also interesting is the town of Arles, France is in the background. Those buildings are Arles.
Oh,
So
that's
why so much sunflowers? Well, Ringo likened the sunflowers. She said that there were many hues of their skin colors, many hues of sunflowers. And she likened them to the solidarity, that there are many together, tall, strong, and turning their faces to follow the sun.
so interesting.
So, and they're all looking forward. They do not look backward. And I was reading, someone had said it looked like Van Gogh was kind of not proposing, but trying to get into the group with he's holding his flowers out. But you know, no, it's they are independent. They are separate, but they are all together. And it's again a work of art. And if you ever have the chance to see any of her work in person, make an effort to go see it. It is stunning. She is a master. So I guess to me, her passion is her voice, and her story is, as she said, wanting to tell her side of the story in her own way and giving voice to women artists. So I think she does that incredibly well. Still, and she's still sewing. She is still sewing. All right. Any other questions or comments, observations? If anybody finds out what the words are, please let me know. I have been on the hunt to find what that is. All right. Comments, questions, thoughts?
Lovely.
Okay. Let's go to our next. There we go. Now, this gentleman, Akinsanya Kambon. He was born Mark Teamer. He was born in Sacramento. And, and he is a former Marine, the Black Panther, art professor. He was stricken with polio as a child, and he turned to drawing for comfort and ultimately therapy because he was teased a lot when he was a child. But one thing I found really interesting about his story was growing up in Sacramento, he used to come play in the yard around Crocker.
Oh.
And then one day as a kid, one day when they were kids, one of the kids said, let's go inside. And he went inside the Crocker, and at that time it was only the historic building. They didn't have the new wing attached, so it was the historic galleries. And they went inside, and the first thing he said he saw were these huge paintings. And he stopped in his tracks, and his mouth dropped open, and he just was looking at them. And he had never seen anything like that. And he said that the other kids were like, come on, Mark, come on, we're going to get caught. Let's go. And he said he couldn't move. He was mesmerized. And then from that day on, Cambone said he would visit every day. The entry fee in 1950 was 25 cents. And on the days he couldn't afford it, he would try and sneak past the security guard, and he got thrown out more often than not, but he would always find a way to get in. After a tour of Vietnam, he created the Black Panther coloring book, which was a short work meant to raise awareness about racial inequality and social justice. He didn't think of himself as a Black Panther. He thought of himself as an artist, and they kind of volunteered him to do this work. And the interesting thing to me is that despite being semi-illiterate in his youth, he did not read very well. He earned his Master's of Fine Arts at Cal State Fresno, and then he taught for 26 years at Cal State Long Beach as a professor in the art department.
Wow.
And he works in many mediums. He does bronze and he paints, but it's these ceramics where his storytelling skills come alive. He has incredible technical artistic abilities, and that's necessary because he fires his ceramics in the Western style raku technique, and that's a very challenging and unpredictable process. And but it creates these wonderful, luminous, iridescent glaze finishes. And before each firing, he does each in a very ceremonial manner. but he infuses each of his works with its own juju, as he calls it, or spiritual vigor. He draws heavily on narrative tradition or oral storytelling, and of course personal experiences. And he's traveled throughout Africa, and so all of his works have some the design or tribal symbols or imprints into all of his work. And these pieces are actually quite large. Both of them, they're over 3 feet. The lidded jar is very wide, very big. They're very luminous, and they're just charming to be around. Let me talk quickly about the one on the right. It's called The Greatest Shame. It's filled with tribal symbols and in reference to deities. It refers to the transatlantic slave trade, and that which transported an estimated 12 million individuals across the Atlantic to the Americas between the 16th century and the 19th century. And on one side, the side unfortunately you can't see, is a man on horseback that leads a captive man. And on this side where you can see is a figure led by a large turtle. You can see it right below the handle. And the turtle is a symbol of wisdom. And he felt in this that we must follow the lead of the wisest, or we will be guided down the wrong path. So a lot of intricate symbolism. And as you can see, even around below the rim is the African continent in green. It's around that. So a very stunning piece. The piece on the left, John Russell, Buffalo Soldier. It refers to the Buffalo Soldiers. It was a title given to the members of the 10th Cavalry Regiment of the U.S. Army, and which was an all-black unit formed after the Civil War. And the exact name of how they got Buffalo Soldiers is really unknown, but one of the stories involves Private John Russell, who was attacked by 70 Cheyenne warriors while escorting 2 civilians on a hunting trip. And he suffered a gunshot wound to his shoulder and 11 lance wounds, and he survived. And the Cheyennes were so impressed, they compared the African-American soldiers to the buffalo because of their fierceness. So that's one story of how the Buffalo Soldiers got his name. And as an interesting story, I know you all laugh when I said he was born Mark Teamer, and his name is Akansanya Kambone. And when he was doing some soul searching, he discovered, after discovering his Yoruba ancestries in the late 1980s, Kambone, he wanted to strengthen his connection to his roots by adopting a Yoruba name. But in the Yoruba culture, a person needs to be named by the people who know him best. So he gathered his closest friends and family to choose a name, and they chose Akansanya, which means hero of vengeance. And he says, I can't accept that name. He said, people are heroes, individuals aren't. And they said, yeah, we figured you were going to say that, but we're still going to call you Akansanya. So that's how he got the name, and it stuck, and that's what he has used since that time. And the show is still going on. It probably will be gone by the time the Crocker opens, but you never know. It's still there, but the Crocker does own several pieces, and they will be on display, and they are absolutely wonderful.
They're big, right, Susanne?
Beg your pardon?
You said they're really big.
They are big, yes. They're over 3 feet. And the lidded jar is quite large around, like 2.5 feet around circumstance, almost circumference. It's I think 2.5 or 3 feet circumference. It's quite large.
That would seem to be hard to actually put that in a kiln and not have it break.
Exactly, especially with the raku method, which is very challenging. And it was like what we saw last month, and we talked about the Southwest pottery. You don't know if the piece is going to come out or not. So you take a lot into your hands, but You know, he's a very spiritual process for him, and that's how he puts the pieces into the kiln. All right, our last piece is the artwork that we started with Claudia's meditation.
Mm.
And it's absolutely lovely piece, and it is as vibrant, it's more vibrant in person than it is actually on the screen. So while looking at this painting, I want you to think not only about what you see, the shapes and the colors, but what it makes you feel like. What does this make you feel like? So, and if I told you that the artist was a jazz musician, would that resonate, the feelings you get from this piece? The piece was done by Richard Mayhew, and to Mayhew, the path in this painting represents the road not taken.
Hmm.
And for him, the road not taken was music. He chose to become an artist of painting rather than a musician. He was a jazz musician, but he used that talent, that improvisational talent, he carried over into a lot of his spontaneous, impressionistic landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
And he refers to these as moodscapes. And when you look at these colors and this feeling, it kind of goes back to the impressionist painters who followed kind of the science of putting opposite colors next to each other to enhance their vividness, and then also complementary colors next to each other to allow the eye to mix them into another blend of color. And of course, like many artists of his time, Richard wasn't only a painter, he was an activist. And in 1963, he joined Spiral, which was a Harlem-based collective formed by other African-American artists to discuss the role of African-Americans in the politics and culture of America. Well, unlike many of his colleagues, Mayhew pursued otherworldliness and perfection through the spirituality of his abstract landscapes. He chose to do it this way. He got a lot of hassle for it because he wasn't a strong enough activist, they felt. But he said, look, I'm painting 40 acres and a mule. And he said, I'm referring to that because of the land parcel and livestock promised, but was never delivered to the formerly enslaved African Americans after the Civil War. So he says, I'm doing it my way. And this is where I'm finding my passion. This is my voice. And this is staying true to me. So it's a absolutely lovely piece. It is very ethereal, very dreamy, but in a way there's a lot to see here. And the more you look at it, the more you can be drawn in down this path.
Yeah, when you first look at the painting, it looks like just a lot of colors, and it's really attractive. But the longer you look at it, it's like it does. It absolutely draws you in. You realize those are trees on the horizon there, and you know it gets defined.
Right, exactly, Melissa. And you're thinking, well, those colors don't make sense because where do you see a red and pink and road? But it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter because he was a master at perspective and layering the paint and how to use those colors perfectly.
Wow.
Yeah, his work is stunning. So ladies, this kind of ends our tour, and I hope you've enjoyed our brief